Ava Thompson was the CEO of Thompson Industries, a huge company that made everything from toys to tools. She was known for being smart, strong, and always in control. Her office was on the top floor of the tallest building in town, and from there she could see everything. But even Ava had problems. Her grandfather, who started the company, believed that to keep Thompson Industries successful, she needed to marry someone who could bring even more money and power to the table. He had a list of eligible bachelors, all rich and important. Ava hated the idea. She didn't want to marry someone just for business. She wanted to marry someone she loved, someone who saw her for who she was, not just for her company. Every day, her grandfather would remind her about the importance of finding a husband. He would show her pictures of the men he thought were suitable. Ava would politely listen, but inside she felt trapped. She knew she had to do something, and fast, to avoid a marriage she didn't want. She needed a plan, a crazy plan, and she needed it now. While Ava was worrying in her fancy office, Ben was under a car covered in grease. Ben owned a small auto shop on the other side of town. It wasn't much, but it was his. He loved fixing cars. He could take any broken-down vehicle and make it run like new. Ben was a good guy. He always helped people even if they couldn't pay him right away. He had a big heart and a kind smile. But lately, things had been tough. The shop wasn't making enough money and he was struggling to pay the bills. He even had to borrow money from his sister, which he hated doing. He dreamed of expanding the shop, buying new equipment, and hiring another mechanic. But those were just dreams. Right now, he was just trying to keep the lights on. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and tightened a bolt. He knew he had to find a way to make things better, not just for himself, but for his family too. Little did he know, Ava's crazy plan was about to change his life forever. Ava spent the next few days researching. She needed someone who wouldn't be intimidated by her wealth or power, someone who needed the money, and someone who seemed trustworthy. That's when she remembered Ben. He had fixed her car once when it broke down outside of town. He was honest, kind, and didn't treat her any differently, even after he found out who she was. She drove to his shop, her fancy car looking out of place next to the old, rusty vehicles. Ben looked surprised to see her. "Ava, right? What can I do for you?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. Ava took a deep breath. "Ben, I have a proposition for you," she said. She explained her situation with her grandfather and the pressure to marry. Then she laid out her crazy plan. A fake marriage. "I'll pay you a large sum of money, enough to fix your shop and more, if you agree to marry me. Just for a year. We'll pretend to be in love and then we'll get a divorce. No strings attached." Ben stared at her, speechless. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. A fake marriage? With a CEO? It sounded like something out of a movie. Ben needed time to think. A lot of time. He told Ava he'd give her an answer the next day. That night, he barely slept. He tossed and turned, weighing the pros and cons. It was crazy. Utterly crazy. But the money could solve all his problems. He could fix the shop, pay back his sister, and maybe even hire someone to help him. He also thought about Ava. She seemed desperate but also kind of sad. He wondered what it must be like to have so much power and still feel trapped. He knew he wasn't in love with her, not even close. But he felt a pang of sympathy. The next morning, Ava arrived at the shop, looking nervous. Ben took a deep breath. "Okay, Ava," he said. "I'll do it." Ava's face lit up with relief. "Really? You will?" "Yes," Ben replied. "But I have a few conditions of my own." He needed to make sure he was protected too. This was a big step, and he wanted to make sure he wasn't making a huge mistake. It was a deal with the devil, maybe, but it was a deal he felt he had to make. For his family, for his future. The wedding was small, but fancy. Ava's grandfather insisted on inviting a few important business partners. Ben felt completely out of place in his rented tuxedo, surrounded by wealthy people in expensive clothes. He kept accidentally spilling champagne and tripping over his own feet. Ava, on the other hand, looked stunning in her white dress. She played the part of the happy bride perfectly, smiling and laughing for the cameras. After the wedding came the hard part, living together. Ben moved into Ava's huge mansion. He had his own room, of course, but it still felt weird. He was used to his small apartment above the auto shop. Now he had a butler, a housekeeper, and a swimming pool he didn't know how to use. The first few days were awkward. They tried to avoid each other as much as possible. At dinner, they made small talk about the weather or the news. It was like they were strangers pretending to be married. Ben missed the smell of grease and the sound of engines. Ava missed her quiet evenings alone. This fake marriage was going to be harder than they thought. Things started to get interesting and funny when they had to attend social events together. Ben didn't know which fork to use at fancy dinners, and he accidentally called the company's biggest investor Buddy. Ava had to discreetly correct him, trying not to laugh. He also wore his work boots to a charity gala, claiming they were comfortable and practical. Ava, in turn, decided to visit Ben's auto shop. She tried to help him fix a car, but ended up covered in grease. She also tried to drink coffee from the greasy mugs, making a face at the strong, bitter taste. She even attempted to use a wrench, but almost dropped it on her foot. These awkward and humorous situations forced them to interact and see each other in a new light. Ben saw that Ava, despite her wealth and power, was willing to try new things. Ava saw that Ben was genuinely good at what he did and that he cared about his customers. They were still pretending, but the lines between their fake marriage and a real friendship were starting to blur. As they spent more time together, a strange thing started to happen. They began to like each other. Really like each other. Ava saw that Ben was more than just a kind-hearted mechanic. He was funny, smart, and incredibly genuine. He didn't care about her money or her status. He treated her like a normal person, which was something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Ben, in turn, saw that Ava was more than just a powerful CEO. She was vulnerable, lonely, and secretly longed for a simple life. He admired her strength and her determination, but he also saw her softer side. He started noticing the way her eyes sparkled when she laughed and the way she bit her lip when she was concentrating. She noticed how his hands were always covered in grease, but how gentle they were when he touched her arm. A small smile would play on her lips whenever he entered the room. The attraction was undeniable, and it was growing stronger every day. The fake marriage was starting to feel a little too real. Instead of avoiding each other, Ava and Ben started seeking out each other's company. Ava would often visit Ben at the auto shop, watching him work and asking questions about cars. She even started learning how to change a tire. Ben, in turn, would sometimes join Ava for dinner, even when there weren't any business partners to impress. They discovered they both loved old movies and spent hours watching them together in Ava's home theater. They both cared deeply about their families and wanted to make them proud. They both valued honesty and kindness. As they shared their thoughts and feelings, they realized they had more in common than they ever thought possible. One evening, while watching a movie, Ava leaned her head on Ben's shoulder. He didn't pull away. Instead, he gently put his arm around her. Felt natural, comfortable, and right. The fake marriage was becoming something much more complicated and much more beautiful. They were falling in love whether they wanted to or not. Just as their feelings were deepening, trouble arrived. A rival company, Sterling Enterprises, had been trying to take over Thompson Industries for years. Their CEO, Mr. Sterling, was known for his ruthless tactics. He saw Ava's marriage as a weakness, a distraction that he could exploit. Strange things started happening. Important documents went missing from Ava's office. There were rumors spreading about Thompson Industries' financial stability. Someone was trying to sabotage the company, and Ava knew it was Sterling. At the same time, someone from Ben's past showed up, causing trouble at the auto shop. An old friend who Ben had helped out years ago was now in debt and wanted Ben to repay the favor by getting involved in something illegal. Ben refused, but the friend became persistent, threatening to reveal secrets from Ben's past if he didn't cooperate. Ava and Ben suddenly had more to worry about than just their fake marriage. They had real problems to face, and they would have to face them together. Ava and Ben knew they had to work together. Ava, using her business skills, started investigating Sterling Enterprises. Ben, with his street smarts and connections, tried to find out who was spreading the rumors about Thompson Industries. They spent hours brainstorming, sharing information, and supporting each other. Ava helped Ben find a lawyer to protect himself from his old friend. Ben helped Ava install a better security system in her office. Working together, they discovered that Sterling had hired someone from within Thompson Industries to steal the documents and spread the rumors. They also found evidence that Ben's old friend was being paid by Sterling to cause trouble. With the evidence they gathered, Ava was able to expose Sterling's plan and protect Thompson Industries. Ben, with Ava's support, stood up to his old friend and made him leave town. Facing these challenges together strengthened their bond. They learned to trust each other completely, and their love grew even stronger. They were no longer just pretending. They were a team, a real couple, fighting for each other and for their future. The moment of realization hit Ava like a wave. It was after they had successfully dealt with Sterling and Ben's old friend. They were sitting on the couch, exhausted but happy, watching one of their favorite old movies. Ben had his arm around her, and she felt safe and loved. She looked at him, really looked at him, at the lines around his eyes that crinkled when he smiled, at the way he always put others before himself, at his kind heart and his unwavering honesty. In that moment, she knew. She wasn't just pretending to be in love with him. She was genuinely, deeply, irrevocably in love with Ben. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. What would happen when the year was up? Would he want to stay with her? Or would he go back to his simple life, leaving her alone again? She had to tell him how she felt, but she was afraid of ruining everything. What if he didn't feel the same way? What if he only saw her as a way to fix his shop? The stakes were higher than ever, and Ava had no idea what to do. Ben was struggling with his own feelings. He too had fallen in love with Ava. He admired her strength, her intelligence, and her kindness. He loved the way she laughed, the way she cared about others, and the way she looked at him like he was the most important person in the world. But a nagging doubt lingered in his mind. Was her love real, or was it just part of the agreement? Had she only grown closer to him because he was helping her with her problems? He was just a mechanic, and she was a powerful CEO. Could she really love someone like him? He knew he couldn't go on pretending forever. He had to know the truth. But asking her would be the hardest thing he'd ever done. He was afraid of her answer, afraid of losing her, and afraid of being hurt. He felt trapped between his heart and his head, unsure of which path to take. The fake marriage had become a real emotional minefield, and Ben was about to step right into it. Ava was caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Should she tell Ben how she felt and risk everything? Confessing her love could lead to a real, fulfilling relationship, but it could also destroy the fragile peace they had found. What if he didn't love her back? What if he thought she was just being silly or desperate? On the other hand, could she continue the fake marriage, pretending that everything was fine when her heart was aching to tell him the truth? Keeping her feelings bottled up was exhausting and painful. But at least it was safe. As long as she didn't say anything, she wouldn't get hurt. Her grandfather was starting to ask questions about when they were going to start a family, which put even more pressure on her. She knew she couldn't keep up the charade forever. She had to make a decision, one that would change her life forever. But which decision was the right one? Ava felt lost and confused, torn between her heart and her fears. Ben's mind was a battlefield of insecurities. He kept asking himself, am I good enough for Ava? He was just a simple mechanic, while she was a powerful, wealthy CEO. They came from different worlds, different backgrounds. Could they really make it work? He also struggled with the question of trust. Could he truly believe that Ava loved him for who he was and not just because of their agreement? He worried that she might eventually realize she had made a mistake, that she belonged with someone more her equal. He knew he loved her with all his heart, but he was afraid of being hurt. He didn't want to be just a temporary fix, a stepping stone to something better. He wanted to be her forever, but he didn't know if that was possible. He confided in his sister, who reminded him of all the good things about himself. She told him that Ava was lucky to have him and that he should trust his heart. But even with her encouragement, Ben still struggled with his doubts. He needed to find a way to believe in himself and to trust that Ava's feelings were real. The clock was ticking, and the end of their agreement was getting closer every day. Ava decided she couldn't wait any longer. She needed to know where she stood with Ben. She planned a surprise for him. She knew how much he loved working on cars, so she bought the building next to his auto shop and completely renovated it, turning it into a state-of-the-art repair facility. She invited him to the new building, blindfolding him before leading him inside. When she took off the blindfold, Ben was speechless. The new shop had everything he had ever dreamed of: new equipment, a comfortable waiting area for customers, and even a small office for him. Ava, what is all this? He asked, his voice filled with emotion. Ben, she said, taking his hands in hers, I did this for you. Because I love you. I wanted to show you that I believe in you and your dreams. This isn't part of the agreement. This is from my heart. Ben looked at her, tears welling up in his eyes. He realized that her love was real, that she saw him for who he was, and that she believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. Her grand gesture finally shattered all his doubts. Just when things seemed perfect, Ava's grandfather called a family meeting. He announced that he had arranged a merger with another company, and as part of the deal, Ava was expected to marry the CEO's son. He had no idea that Ava and Ben's marriage was real. Ava was furious. She told her grandfather that she was already married and that she was in love with her husband. Her grandfather scoffed. He said that Ben was just a mechanic and not good enough for her or the company. He threatened to disinherit her and take away her position as CEO if she didn't go through with the arranged marriage. Ava was faced with an impossible choice: follow her heart and risk losing everything, or obey her grandfather and betray her love for Ben. The pressure was immense and she didn't know what to do. Her grandfather's old-fashioned beliefs were threatening to tear her and Ben apart. The initial reason for the fake marriage had come back to haunt them stronger than ever. Ava knew what she had to do. She couldn't betray her love for Ben even if it meant losing everything. She stood up to her grandfather, telling him that she loved Ben and that she would never marry anyone else. "I understand that you want what's best for the company," she said, "but I can't sacrifice my happiness for business. Ben makes me happy, and that's more important than any merger or any amount of money." Her grandfather was furious. He called her foolish and threatened to cut her out of his life completely. But Ava stood her ground. She knew she was making the right decision. She resigned from her position as CEO, knowing that she could always find another way to make a living. What mattered most was being with Ben. She had chosen love over business, defying expectations and risking her entire future. It was a scary decision, but also a liberating one. She was finally free to be herself and to follow her heart. Ben was amazed by Ava's courage. He knew how much her company meant to her, and he was touched that she would give it all up for him. He knew then that their love was real and that they were meant to be together. He proposed to her, not with a fake ring this time, but with a real one, a simple band that symbolized their love and commitment. Ava happily accepted. They decided to have another wedding, a small, intimate ceremony with just their closest friends and family. They talked about their future, about building a life together not based on wealth or status, but on love and trust. Ava decided to use her business skills to help Ben expand his auto shop, turning it into a successful and respected business in the community. Ben, in turn, supported Ava in finding a new career that was more aligned with her values and passions. They knew there would be challenges ahead, but they were confident that they could overcome them together. They had found something special, something real, and they were determined to hold on to it. Their fake marriage had turned into a true love story, and they were ready to start their new chapter. Years later, Ava and Ben were living a happy and fulfilling life. Ava had found a new career as a consultant, helping small businesses grow and thrive. Ben's auto shop was booming, thanks to Ava's business savvy and Ben's excellent skills. They lived in a cozy house, not as big as the mansion, but filled with love and laughter. Ava's grandfather eventually came around, realizing that Ava's happiness was more important than any business deal. He even started visiting the auto shop, chatting with Ben about cars and offering business advice. Ava and Ben had blended their different worlds seamlessly. They hosted fancy dinner parties and casual barbecues, inviting people from all walks of life. They had proven that love could conquer all, that differences didn't matter, and that a fake marriage could sometimes lead to the most real and beautiful love story of all. As they stood hand in hand watching the sunset, they knew they had made the right choice. They had found their happily ever after, not in a boardroom or a fancy mansion, but in each other's arms. Their journey had been unexpected and challenging, but it had led them to a love that was stronger than anything they could have ever imagined.